Tonight on News 5 Live, over 100 UB students are at risk of being kicked out for lack of tuition payment. The Ministry of Health is yet to receive antiretroviral meds from Trinidad and Tobago. And a student's death is suspected to be caused by dengue. A post from John Seldiver. Is it in response to Patrick Faber? A medical scam is linked to Belize. And the apprenticeship program at 10. Employers meet to talk about how to improve at-risk youth initiative. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, November 6th. I am Marlene Cuellar. There are tensions at the University of Belize where over 100 students are at risk of being kicked out of the ongoing semester for lack of tuition payment. It is understood that the government provides $11 million to UB this year, but cash is running low. On Tuesday, the university issued a notice on its social media page saying that the students will be deregistered on November 11th. That is, removed from the courses that they are currently taking. According to the statement, these students have, quote, paid nothing or less than 10% of what was requested of them, unquote. While the names of the students were not disclosed, their corresponding student ID numbers were attached to the post. The exposure sent students in a rage, and they took to social media to express their discontent with the manner in which the institution has exposed those who have been negligent with their payments. According to Acting Director of Finance Ian Sangster, the institution has exhausted all measures to contact the students so that they can settle their outstanding payments, but to no avail.
The university, as its natural course of doing business, would always be collecting on their student receivables. There are students who have been enrolled at the university and have not made any payments toward their accounts. We have sent notices to them. In fact, we sent out about 5 text blasts. We also sent out emails, updates through the EUB website, advising them of different options that they have in terms of coming to make good on their balances. We have done this as a matter of course. It's something that we have done every year. Students are aware of it. There are some students probably who have made a decision to take it public, but we have basically done this as a matter of course. Last year, for example, we did it. We're doing it again this year. We have done everything in terms of extending the time frame in which these students could get their accounts settled. Some of them have availed themselves of the service, others haven't. And so really it's the students who have not done that we are really looking to see if we can get them financially cleared.
What's the penalty, so to speak, of not paying?
If a student is not financially cleared, basically what happens is the classes that they're in this semester, they're taken out of those classes. They can in fact come back in the spring semester and apply for courses that they didn't complete. But basically it is a deregistration for the semester. It is not the case as in some universities where if a student is deregistered, they can no longer come back to the university. That's not the case here.
There are over 5,000 students enrolled at the 4 UB campuses across the country. Each student pays roughly about $1,000 for the associate's program and $2,200 for the bachelor's program per semester at the institution. The outstanding balance is for only the first semester of the 2019 school year. But Ian Sangster says that the payments must be collected for the institution to meet its obligations.
For us to run the university, there are needs that we have to also help our students to understand as well their responsibility in terms of meeting those financial obligations that they have. So this is just a normal part of what we do, and we're not the only one. Other schools as well will have their different methods through which they would make their collections and so on. We are looking at students who are tiered in terms of no payments to their accounts, and those were the initial ones that we tried to reach. The second list really is just a review of what happens after, because during this period of time there are students who may be coming in to make good on their payments, and so for those students who are doing that, we will have to eliminate from anything that occurs next week. That second list is a review of where we are at in terms of accounts that are outstanding.
According to Sangster, a second list of students whose accounts have not been settled will be published on November 12, 2019. On Tuesday, Deputy Prime Minister Patrick Farber took on the government at a youth event in Belize City. Faber said that politicians and the people are corrupt and that there is a lot of corruption. He spoke of crime, questioning why gang-related murders are not being solved, and noted that leadership contender John Saldivar's turf in Belmopan is showing an increase in crime. Faber chastised the government for failing to spend enough money on youth and sports. The comments were made 2 days after Saldivar held his campaign launch at the Civic. Saldivar can count on the support of many of his cabinet colleagues. This morning, Saldivar took to social media to post what many believe is a response to Faber's comments. Saldivar wrote, quote, "I have been in politics now for 25 years. I am accustomed to the attacks. My defense is my reputation for those who know me. I refuse to go to the gutter. There are more important matters of nation building that require my attention," unquote. On Tuesday at a conference, Faber also called on the youth to take over the leadership of this country.
26% of the budget in Belize is spent on education. I say, wow, everybody, wow, that's a great thing. That's a great thing, and indeed it is a great thing, but if you're spending cents out of every dollar on education and the returns are very weak, we still can't claim the kind of excellence that 26 cents out of every dollar should be putting out. Now we are wasting our efforts, and it must mean that we must have a crucial conversation with the players, and I am fearful that if we do the very same thing in the areas of youth and sports, not dedicated and committed to reducing all of these things without the elements of corruption which face our entire system, we are wasting our time. There is something about youth in leadership that is gravitating in this country. You check it out. Anytime a young person puts himself up, I'm not talking about the one that way, wah. If you really believe in the task that you're facing, that's why I have a lot of pride. I'm very proud of many of the players in the DYS who have pulled themselves up and become leaders, and nobody can tell me down the road that they won't be grand, but they are grand now. I've watched you develop in many respects. That is what needs to happen, and we need to take over the leadership of this country. We need to do it. I know they ask for a coup. I know I'm asking for a revolution, yes, but not the kind where you pick up guns. But we need to do that. And we need to do it in an organized way to let people know that we're not playing. You have a role to play. You could today and say, oh, that's not my business. What's any fight up? What's any this, that. You have an intelligent mind. You have an objective mind. And you can make a contribution to what goes on. You do. Even if it is writing how you feel about certain things on the social media, rather than join one bandwagon and just bring down somebody or tear down somebody, which is what Facebook and to some extent Instagram. Thank God we not got Twitter, because it be like Trump in America. And as we go on, maybe that will come, you know. Trump is 71, 72, somewhere around there. So he's not one from the old generation that is an immigrant, but he uses the technology, however, much to his detriment. He will not agree with the fact that it is his detriment, but our leaders need to be engaged.
A second female has died in less than 2 months, and the suspicion is that her death was caused by dengue. The 14-year-old student from San Ignacio died at the Carl Hichter Memorial Hospital on Tuesday. And while not confirmed as yet, it is highly suspected that she died from complications associated with the disease. Jennifer Moreno, whose family is originally from Bella Vista Village in the Toledo district, was a student at Sacred Heart High School and began showing symptoms last week. Her condition worsened, and on Monday, October 4th, she was taken to a medical facility by her mother. Within 24 hours, her health condition worsened, and she was transferred to the intensive care unit at the KHMH, where she succumbed on November 5th. While an investigation is being conducted to determine the cause of her death, Regional Health Manager Dr. Javier Zuniga shared the details of a preliminary report.
Unfortunately, we do have a death highly suspected to be by dengue virus. However, at the moment, we are still investigating. to see what exactly led to the death of this teenager. At the moment, I cannot give you a lot of information into the cause of death. We do know that the child did visit a private physician last week, and on Monday her mother took her to the health facility at San Ignacio, so the San Ignacio Community Hospital, where she was assessed, and due to her condition she was quickly referred to Western Regional Hospital, where she was assessed by specialists, a pediatrician and internist, and they determined that the child needed critical care. So she was immediately transferred to the ICU at KHMH. That's as far as the information that I can give you at this time. In regards to the cause of death, we are still in investigation, so I cannot comment on that part.
Back in September, a family believed that their loved one died due to dengue. In the case of Hopkins resident Jasmine Ogaldes, she had a pre-existing condition and her health deteriorated rapidly. Ogaldes was rushed from the Southern Regional Hospital and airlifted to Belize City, but later died at the KHMH while receiving treatment. Regional Health Manager for the Western Health Region, Dr. Javier Zuniga, says that there are many complications associated with dengue. He advises that persons who detect symptoms of dengue at an early stage should seek medical attention, because any severe case can lead to hypovolemic shock and eventually death. Dr. Zuniga stresses that there are dengue cases that appear with or without symptoms. Here's how he explains it.
Not because you have only fever means that you will be okay. This is just a sign to say that, I have an illness. But dengue, we've seen that can progress very rapidly into severe dengue. So we have dengue without warning signs, with warning signs, and then severe dengue. And when we speak about severe dengue, it's when people start having hemodynamic decompensation. So they're losing volume from the blood. So, for example, if they start bleeding from different areas of the body, could be from the mucosas, the eyes, the mouth, the nose, the vagina from some females, or even the gastrointestinal system. So these signs are important. If bleeding occurs anywhere and you have fever, run to the hospital, okay? Because that can be a severe form of dengue, and it leads then to hypovolemic shock very rapidly, and that is what kills the patient.
Since the dengue outbreak was announced by the Ministry of Health earlier this year, weekly reports have shown the Western region as one of the areas recording the highest number of cases. The northern districts of Corozal and Orange Walk have also confirmed soaring numbers. At the San Ignacio Community Hospital and the Western Regional Hospital in Belmopan, which encompasses the Western Health Region, Dr. Javier Zuniga says they have put in place a dengue clinic. The medical team assigned to this function focus primarily on providing service for those persons who are exhibiting dengue-like symptoms during this epidemic. He says that while there has been a decrease in the number of cases, which spiked in August and September with the rains, they are expecting to see another spike of the epidemic.
The peak of our outbreak in the month of August, September, and during that, now in October, we had a decrease in the number of cases. This is when the rain started, and now we're starting to see that, we have had an increase in the number of cases, not to the extent of the peak that we had in September, right, and August. So we expected this because we knew the rains were coming and we knew that more mosquitoes would be out. We have set up what we call a dengue clinic, which means anybody that comes with fever goes directly to that clinic. They are assessed very quickly, and dengue is either ruled out or another condition. If it's another condition, then they will pass on to the outpatient area. However, if it is dengue, then and we highly suspect it's dengue, then we do other testing, and we hold those patients there to monitor them for a while before we release them. All right? So that is what we have been doing in this area. We continue to do that as we speak. Once you have fever, please go to the hospital so that we can rule out dengue. This is because we are still in an active period of an epidemic, of an outbreak. Now with the rains, it's even, well, at this moment we don't have a lot of cases, but the mosquitoes that transmit the virus is now reproducing at a faster rate because water exists, stagnant water we're speaking about. So again, we'd make a call to the public that, the Ministry of Health can do its part, but the population and the communities need to do their part as well.
While the case of the student is yet to be confirmed, according to Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero, for this year there have been 4 cases of dengue-related deaths. This year there have been more confirmed dengue cases than last year's figures. Dr. Manzanero says that the Vector Control Unit is doing what it can to reduce and control the mosquito population and calls on the public to do their part.
The numbers have not really spiked up again, but that's something we are monitoring on a weekly basis.
From what you've seen in terms of the figures compared to last year's, has there been an increase?
Yeah, we had I think May we had more cases than the total amount that we had for the total year in 2018. So the numbers are much higher than last year.
So I would imagine that the vector control team is doing much more than last year in terms of spraying and other efforts.
Yes, we have had to go twice for supplementary budgets in terms of procuring insecticides, repellents, bed nets, and hiring people part-time to go and help with the spraying. I know people have been telling us, well, you're not spraying enough, but I'm not so sure how much we are doing as a community in ensuring that we are doing our part, in ensuring that we don't have to. Spraying is never going to be enough, and spraying is not going to be the answer also for dengue.
Belize has yet to restock on antiretroviral medication. Belize City clinics are completely out of stock of the much-needed medication, and clinics in other districts are running low. The shortage of medication is of concern for persons living with HIV because not taking the meds can cause the virus to become resistant to the drugs. The Ministry of Health has placed 2 orders with a supplier in India, but the medication has yet to arrive. Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, says that a loan has been secured from Trinidad and Tobago, but the arrival date of the meds is uncertain at the moment.
We have a loan that is coming from Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know when the arrival date of that is going to be.
Of the medication? Of
the medication until the medication that we have procured arrives in, I believe, the first week of December. How do you try to make sure it doesn't happen again? How do you defend smaller economies such as ours when you're having issues across the country? Because I can tell you, I spoke personally to the program director from El Salvador directly, and I said, can you loan us? She said, no, I can't, because I myself am having a delay. Medications that were supposed to have arrived in May are just getting into El Salvador. I can't possibly lend you any medication. And I know that when we went to Paho, the only country that could have afforded us a loan of medication was Trinidad and Tobago.
There's a countrywide stock out because I know that the Belize City clinics had stocked out, and I know some patients had to travel to San Pedro to get some pills.
We had only stocked out in Belize City. Once we did our mapping, we had medications. So what we tried to do is shift some medication around. I know last week somebody brought medications that were in Stan Creek up to Orange Walk to try to bridge that gap.
Coming up, Dion Zabane goes back to court. Today, the case between 73-year-old Primrose Gabriel and her son, 43-year-old Diane Zabane, and the Department of the Environment continued before Senior Magistrate Aretha Ford. The mother and son are being charged with several offenses, including failure to obtain environmental clearance, hindering an officer in relation to his duties, and failure to comply with a stop order. The charges are in relation to parcel 4670, which is a property located on the seabed at one end of Seashore Drive in Belize City. In January of this year, the Department of Environment and the Gang Suppression Unit enforced a stop order for Zabane to cease and desist from developing the property. In today's court proceedings, Anthony Mai, an environmental officer, testified to issuing the oral stop order. After court, Javon Hulse, the legal counsel for the DOE, spoke to the media about what transpired.
The Environmental Protection Act is very clear insofar as the powers it gives to officers, in that it gives officers the power, for instance, similar to police, to arrest, to detain, to charge for environmental offenses. So the law is clear.
No, he also, Mr. Agres also stated that your Mr. Mai had basically, what he's saying, he basically acted ultra vires by throwing these people off their land, and Mr. Mai actually agreed to that.
Well, that's a matter of their opinion, because like I said, the law is very clear in what it empowers the officers to do. You have the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute, a sister entity that works with the Department of the Environment. From time to time, and generally in issues that relate to the coastal environment, the DOE would work closely with the Coastal Zone Management Authority. In this instance, the question was whether DOE contacted or worked with Coastal Zone. And Mr. Mai commented, no. Why? Because for we to have worked with Coastal Zone, you would have been going through the process. The issue for this, and that is before the court, is that it did not go through the process. So the opportunity to work together did not arise. DOE stopped it so that we could guide it through the process. And that's the issue that is before the court.
Gabriel and Zabane are being represented by attorney Emil Arguelles. The case was adjourned to January 22nd, 2020. Reynaldo Verde remains locked up in the United States, facing charges of extortion and attempted extortion. The former deputy director of General Tax Services pled not guilty to those charges. Verde was arrested while transiting the U.S. on his return to Belize. He's being accused by the owner of Orchid Bay in Corozal, Chris Williams. Williams alleges that Verde on several occasions sought to collect $350,000 to wipe away taxes owed by Orchid Bay. Williams reported the matter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which subsequently looked into the allegation. That investigation led to a secret recording and a sting operation in Corozal, where an armed Verde and Williams met. Verde is yet to stand trial, but earlier this week, the U.S. government's attorney filed court documents that list out all the evidence that would be used to prosecute the case against Verde. The trove of evidence includes 2 recordings of conversations on January 19th and November 13th, 2017, 3 recordings of a meeting between Verde and Williams on August 24, 2019, and 1 page of WhatsApp messages. The government has advised its agents and officers involved in this case to preserve all rough notes. The University of Otago in New Zealand is investigating claims that medical students faked work placement records in Belize. An online article claims that the medical students got their elective paperwork signed off for cash. The allegation suggests some interns choose specific medical centers in Belize where they can get their placements signed off, sometimes for cash after only a week or less. For around $300, trainee doctors can have their documents falsified before being taken on a tour of the hospital for photos in gowns and scrubs. According to the Director of Health Services, he first became aware of the situation in 2016.
The first time my desk was made aware in 2016 is when medical students, I can't recall if it was from Australia or New Zealand, had come to my desk for my desk to sign them a letter stating that they had done an internship in Belize. I wasn't sure what that was about, and I couldn't sign anything because my desk wasn't fully aware. We did start a canvassing of facilities, and we realized that there had been medical students who had been coming to San Ignacio, primarily Belmopan and San Pedro. Primarily people from Germany, the UK, New Zealand, and Australia. I can't recall from any other country. But because we didn't have a structure in place when we reviewed that in 2016, my note 3 years ago to the management teams had been that we were no longer going to be accepting any medical student to come and do medical electives in Belize until there was a proper structure in place, which we didn't have and we still don't have in our public health system.
Who was giving these people these documents and signing off on them? Because that is something very serious.
Well, I'm not so sure what was signed. I mean, I do know that there was a note published in New Zealand, but I don't know what exactly was signed and who signed it. When we went to the medical students that had been asking us, we basically told them, I can't sign anything because I'm not sure who validated your course of study here. So I know people still
trying to find out who validated or where they were being placed to find out where the bribery, which is being alleged, occurred and who was taking money.
Well, you see, back in 2016, I wasn't so sure that it was a bribery situation. The reason why we clamped it down is because my desk couldn't possibly sign on to documents that we had not structured with anybody. And there was a change in management. Most of the regional management teams were changing as well, so I don't know if there had been an internal mechanism established somewhere.
Today we reached out to the Department of Human Services for a comment on the report made by Kevin Arnold Sr. As you heard in our newscast on Wednesday night, Arnold alleged that his 7-month-old baby boy and 2-year-old daughter were removed from his care and placed in a home because he didn't have proper housing arrangements. Arnold said that less than 2 weeks after that happened in September, he was informed that his baby had suffered an injury to the face that was threatening the baby's life. He went on to claim that the department didn't respond to his queries. Today, when we reached out to the department, they shared a press release to shed light on the matter at hand. According to the department, back in September, they received a report of medical negligence of 2 minors, and when they visited the home, they found the living arrangements to be of risk to the children. The department says that the parents did not agree to have the children taken for medical care, and so the police intervened and removed the children from the home. The release says that a medical exam showed that the children were dehydrated and malnourished. As a result, the Belize Family Court granted an interim care order for the children to the department, and they were placed in foster care. The release says that the parents were informed and offered periodic supervised visitation at the department. In response to the child's injury, the release says that there was no trauma and that the child developed a condition. Quote, on September 20th, 2019, the younger child was rushed to the Carl Houston Memorial Hospital for examination, where he was hospitalized. The parents were informed of the medical emergency on the same day. A CAT scan was conducted on the child, and medical findings were of a non-traumatic spontaneous subdural occipital hematoma. The medical report concluded that there was no trauma to the child's head. The child continues to be monitored by a pediatrician every 2 weeks, unquote. The Department of Human Services says the father failed to attend 2 appointments to meet with the doctor to get an explanation of the child's medical status. The parents' last visitation with the children was on October 18th. There is good news from the Department of Environment on the health of the New River. Today, Environmental Officer Alda Cancino confirmed to News 5 that the aerators that were installed at strategic locations across the river have been removed and that the condition of the river has improved. As you may recall, there was an increase in hydrogen sulfide in the river due to the eutrophication process that had been accelerated by pollution. It threatened fish life in the river and created a pungent smell that affected nearby schools. While the aerators and the recent rains have helped the situation, A New River task force has been established to look at a long-term solution to the issue. Earlier today, News 5 received an update from Cancino on the situation at the river.
The quality of the river has improved. As you know, we had installed aerators. Actually, at this point, we actually have removed the aerators because the data is showing that the river is getting back to its normal state. We have been getting a lot of rains, and that has helped the system a lot as well. So the work from that aspect that is where we are from at that aspect now. But that is only part of the work. What we are also doing is we have been conducting inspections at several facilities in Orange Rock and neighboring communities to look at points of discharge. So in that regard, we're trying to identify point sources of pollution and trying to see what interventions can be made to reduce those loads, quantify the loads, etc. And also, we have been meeting, the New River Task Force has continuously been meeting, and work on the big picture continues, which is the development of the watershed for the New River, watershed management plan. That is necessary. From when we got involved and from when we started working on this is one of the things that we emphasized, that there is a need for a long-term strategy, and that watershed management plan is that strategy. That strategy will allow us to understand the entire characteristics of the New River.
The development of the watershed management plan for the New River is being led by the Forest Department. After the break, the BWS explains the water problems in the city and in Cayo. On the morning of November 4th, residents along the banks of the Mopan and Macau rivers were alerted of flash flooding in the vicinity of those two waterways in the Cayo district. What they were not prepared for was the interruption of water supply from BWS that came as a consequence of the sudden overflow. According to Operations Manager Dave Pescasio, the company's water sources along both rivers were contaminated by flood water, and a decision was made to abruptly cut off the supply of water to Dengue Viejo, San Ignacio, and Santa Elena. The break in distribution lasted several hours as Belize Water Services Limited worked diligently to address the issue. While water has been restored for the majority of the customers in the twin towns, as well as Esperanza Village, customers in the higher elevation may still experience water shortage and low pressure.
We woke up on Monday, I think November 4th, to an advisory of flash flood warning. So we went into monitoring phase, and then shortly after realized that one of our sources in Dengue was inundated with the flood water, and all our source wells in Dengue, in San Ignacio, was affected by the flood too. So we looked inside our reservoirs, we did an inspection there, and both reservoirs received the contaminated water. So we shut those down because we cannot knowingly distribute water that does not meet drinking water standard. That we then went into recovery mode and started to empty the water in the reservoirs. We couldn't get down to the wells in San Ignacio because of the height of the flood water. So we had to look at that a little later in the day. But in looking at Dengue, we realized it was the spring, which is our source across the river, right on the riverbank. We were getting clean water, good water from the wells, which is far away from the river. But because the reservoir was contaminated, we had to shut those down. And so we flushed out the reservoir, cut off the spring, and resorted to going back to only the well source. So with those two wells, we filled back the reservoir and ensured that we had good disinfection level in it. And so we started to distribute in Dengue the same day, on Monday, sometime in the evening.
In San Ignacio, potable water had to be trucked in from elsewhere within the district in order to service priority customers, including hospitals, schools, and the tourism sector. All this while personnel from Belize City were deployed to San Ignacio to restore distribution.
San Ignacio was a more challenge because all 5 wells, 2 galleries, everything was affected. We started pumping those to waste when we could have gotten down to them and realized that we had to continue pump and flush. Right? That took longer. We emptied the reservoir, cleaned that out. And to enter a reservoir, we need to go into a lot of safety mode that we had to deploy personnel from Belize City because it's a confined space. And we have trained, certified personnel that has to monitor that. Right? So that took longer. Because the source wells didn't clear up until the following day, we then went into disinfecting the reservoir and started to put back water into supply, into the reservoir. We filled up, and it was not until last night that we could have started to restore water to the residents of San Ignacio and Santa Elena. But what we did in the interim, we deployed 3 tankers, one that we recently purchased for the company, and we, with assistance from the Belmopan City Council and the San Ignacio Town Council, we started distributing water. Our highest priority was the hospitals in the first instance, right? And then we moved to schools, we moved to restaurants, and then to the residents. So we were trucking water from Dengue and from Belmopan, deploying those trucks around the community to give people a source of water for immediate needs.
The issue of discoloration that was initially detected in Belize City 2 weeks ago also remains a priority for BWS. The change in color of water in the pipelines is attributed to a chemical reaction between chlorine and iron. The occurrence, however, went unnoticed at other stations along the Belize River, including Belmopan. Dave Pescasio, who is responsible for the operations of the company, explained what is being done to address the issue of discoloration.
Belize City is different because the discoloration showed up in the distribution system, not while leaving the plant. And that was the effect of the iron coming in contact with chlorine. Similar to what happened in San Ignacio some years ago. Since then, we have been effectively treating the iron levels that we get in the source at San Ignacio. We've since installed that same system at our double run water treatment plant so that in the event the iron level shows up where it will have that reaction with the chlorine, we'll be able to effectively treat it similar to what we're doing in San Ignacio. After double run water treatment plant, we will install the same thing in Belmopan, which also takes water from the Belize River. All three systems takes water from the Belize River. The part about the iron level reaching double run is that it never showed up in Belmopan. So we have San Ignacio source wells upstream on the bank of the river. We have Belmopan source in Roaring Creek Village, and we have double run significantly downstream of Belmopan. So the iron level didn't show up in Belmopan, it showed up in double run. And we use Belmopan water treatment plant as an indicator of things to come in the river at double run. The high turbid water reach Belmopan, we know exactly when it will reach double run, so we can prepare for it.
When we come back, the apprenticeship program turns 10. We look at the success stories. 10 years ago, the Belize National Youth Apprenticeship Program was started in Belize City with the aim to reduce crime through its focus on the development, education, and employment of at-risk youth. Under the administration of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, hundreds of high school dropouts and single mothers between the ages of 16 and 29 have benefited. In 2010, 20 apprentices were in the first class, and in recent years, there are as many as 100 apprentices per intake. The program turned 10 years old today, and Andrea Polanco tells us more.
I get into altercation that I end up in the courts proceedings after that.
Jerniel Gill was a troubled youth. He was on his way to become just another young Belizean man in prison. But someone believed that the apprenticeship program could help Gill get his life back on track. That's almost 7 years ago, and Gill hasn't looked back. He has completed high school and is enrolled in college pursuing paralegal studies.
First, I was just in there doing nothing, but I had to visit the program every Friday. And after that first intake I've done, I went in the other intake. And from that other intake is there where I try to excel, try to change my life, said I would try to do better because I could have went to jail. I went back to school. I was going to school and working at the time. I'm still going to school and working at this present moment.
This year marks 10 years since the apprenticeship program was started. To commemorate this milestone, the program brought together the employers who provide jobs for the apprentices to do a review of some sort to improve the program.
And we wanted to get some feedback from them. What are some of the challenges they are facing when these young people enter into their workspace? What are some ways they see we can tweak the program to make it better? What areas do they feel is necessary for us to add some additional training for them to become more competent to carry out the responsibilities of the job?
Coordinator Diane Finnegan says that employers want to know more about the apprentices before they're hired in order to help them get more out of the program. They also need to clearly define work hours.
It's just basically to help the employer to know at what level this person is coming in and how to do the supervising, whether they need full supervision or they can be supervised for two weeks and then be left to carry out the task assigned to them. Is it just an 8 to 5 Monday to Friday job, or can they be placed on a schedule, especially in the hotel industry? You know that they have shifts. How does that work? Are these apprentices allowed to work on the weekends?
Gill was an apprentice between 2012 and 2013. He shares how getting that 6-month job has shaped him into the father and student he is today.
From there on, I just started to keep on the right track, the right pace. Not really getting on no altercation with nobody again, from work to home to school and family.
How does it feel to see that your life has taken a complete 180?
Well, it feel real good. It feel real good for me because if you're not trying to achieve something out here, you ain't gonna be nobody.
One of the ways that the employers want to make even more of an impact is to work with these young persons like Gill for a longer period. So the apprenticeship program may explore extending the duration of the program.
Some of the employers feel that 6 months is too short. So how do we extend that to a year? Again, this is information that we have to take up to the Ministry of Education and have them assess that and then make those necessary changes.
Coordinator Finnegan says that while the program continues to evolve, it has been praised for its disciplinary model. She says that its impact cannot be overlooked. Many of the apprentices, troubled youth at one point, have gone on to higher studies and others have found permanent jobs.
Young people who have dropped out of school today have a high school diploma. Today have an associate's degree today are at the point of graduating with a bachelor's degree. So it has created this kind of greed and hunger in them that they don't see themselves stopping just where they came in.
Gil agrees that this program gave him a chance to do more with his life. He says that he has no idea what his life would be like today if he didn't enroll as an apprentice.
Maybe a possibility that maybe in jail, or I might have ended up in the wrong crowd or in the wrong hands with someone else.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.
The United Nations Regional Center for Peace, Disarmament and Development in Latin America and Global Affairs, Canada, are hosting a 2-day workshop in Belize. 10 Caribbean countries are participating in the workshop to discuss the control chemical, nuclear and biological weapons, as well as weapons of mass destruction. The discussions are focused on how customs authorities can control the trade of these weapons to keep them out of the hands of certain parties. The regional perspective is looking at the components which are legally traded goods.
The workshop in these 2 days will be focused on developing control lists. As you know that when we're dealing with weapons of mass destruction or chemical and biological weapons, a lot of the weapons are made up of components that are legal traded goods. And so it is that we need to look at these strategic goods and develop lists that how we are going to control them or monitor them, if you will.
Some might say, you know, we never hear about these kinds of weapons on this in Belize, or maybe, you know, they don't ever pass through here. How relevant is it to our authorities here in the country?
You make a good point, and that is what some of what the commissioner said in his opening remarks, that across the region generally you do not hear about nuclear weapons, and we are not a country, particularly Belize, not a country that deals with nuclear materials, but it is relevant because a lot of the materials that would go into making some of these weapons are legally traded goods. For example, chlorine, fertilizers and other things that can be used with other things to create weapons of mass destruction.
So if we see maybe the customs authorities see perhaps huge shipments, would that like raise a red flag? They're trained to detect.
Yes, and then that is it. Some of the whole reason for us to develop control lists, so that you will know that certain items in certain quantities, there is some monitoring, some reporting, or some licensing requirements. As I said, because some of them are legally traded goods. Sometimes some materials might be of nuclear or radiological potential, but are dual use, are used for medicine, for example. We have X-ray machines. Some of the components of that, you know, X-ray machines are good. Some of the components for that, but it can be used otherwise, and so you have to have some control lists and the reason for control.
Coming up after the break, the 2019 International Film Festival kicks off at the Bliss tonight. The 2019 Belize International Film Festival opens tonight at the Bliss Center for the Performing Arts, and several pieces will be showcased at the inaugural event. Among them is My Father Belize, a short film that is written, produced, and depicted by Belizeans living abroad. Kirby Garcia is an actor in that film.
We want to make sure that we show the real Belize. So if you want to see a movie that's heartwarming, you know, and that's just touching, and just show you the real Belize, come see My Father Belize. I'm telling y'all, you know, you don't want to miss this. This is a representation of all of us as Belizeans here.
It's family. And I mean, we all know here that, you know, how important family is and connecting with family. So that's kind of what we really wanted to bring as in relationships and mending and helping heal. And but we do it in a way where it's not boring. It's not completely dramatic. We have great elements of some laughs, which we all love to laugh, and we all have a family member that can bring out that laughter within us when there's moments of, like, you know, pain or like drama within our lives. Mr. Kirby Garcia here, he does an amazing job at bringing that out within the film.
If you're curious what My Father Belize is about, then here's a brief storyline and what can be expected from the film.
My Father Belize is the story of Sean Sierra. He's the lead character, who is a U.S.-born Belizean who is coming to Belize with his father's ashes to spread his father's ashes in his home country, Belize. He's not completely sure why he was entrusted with that responsibility, because he had a strained relationship with his father for most of his life. While he's in Belize, he comes across the path of a young lady, Ara, played by Keisha Sierra, who has a small child, and he believes that that child may have been fathered by himself during a previous visit to the country. So he's dealing with the loss of his own father, and then he may be a father himself. So all in all, we're exploring the theme of fatherhood in the film.
And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/News5Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, good night.
Dominicans to vote for a new government in a month, and a regional pollster says the Prime Minister is still popular. Our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Wednesday, November 6th. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Dawn Paris. Good evening. Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerritt has announced December 6th as Election Day in Dominica. He made the announcement at a public meeting of his Dominica Labour Party, DLP, on Tuesday night. Nomination day is in just under 2 weeks, Tuesday, November 19th. Both the incumbent DLP and the opposition United Workers' Party, UWP, are fielding a full slate of 21 candidates, and Skerritt called on voters to conduct a peaceful and responsible campaign.
I appeal to all within the sound of my voice. I appeal to all within the sound of my voice to let us strive for peace and maturity in the conduct of this general election. We are one people. We have a nation to build. We have an image to safeguard. Let us conduct this general elections campaign in an atmosphere of civility and responsibility. Let us respect each other's rights and property. Let us emerge from this exercise the envy of the region and the world with a clear mandate from the people and by the people for a new season.